as a pastor, our ministry when we started, and I'm going to ask you another question when we're done here, but when I'm done. When we started, it was my wife and I, which is like managing 20 people, if you know my wife. So I learned great management skills from taking care of my wife, because if you met her, it's like you're talking to her and then you turn your head and you turn back and she's gone. She's out of here. She's someplace else. She's an awesome lady. But anyways, it was just the two of us. And then we took people on the team, and then there was 4 people that were managing. And at one time, as an evangelistic team, was managing 12 people on the ministry team. But when you talk about all of that, now we have here at the church? 300. I'm not managing a team of people. I'm managing a church. This is a ministry. It's a team. This is family. It's not individuals just showing up doing nothing. It's people that are coming to see the kingdom of God advance. And as a result, I'm managing 300 people, not just 20 on a ministry team. It's people. And you manage people. You have a product, who's going to buy it? Well, guess what you're managing? Yeah. And I want you to understand that you're not throwaways. I want to minister to you in a second. You're not throwaways. I don't care what the government of Oregon tells you. You're not there to be used by them. Just like the church, see, as the church goes, so does the world. Do you understand that? As the church goes, so does the world. So if the church has used businesses, guess what it allows the enemy to do in government? To use people. And as a result, I get very passionate about this. I'm tired of people being used, but not appreciated for their giftings of who they are and what God has for them. Every person here has been uniquely formed by God to do something great. Not mediocre. And I was just sharing this earlier. How many of you believe in God here? Raise your hand if you believe in God in any way. All right. Then if you believe in God, then you should be the #1 business in Oregon. Why? Is God #1 or what? Is he the #1 or what? Because if he's #1 and you follow him and you have the words of life and death in you and you have wisdom from God, then you should be #1 in whatever you do, and you should have that mentality. Listen, Jesus never came in second. All right, hear me. We were talking about this, that we know a guy that had access to the archives in Rome, in the Vatican. And they hold a lot of stuff that isn't out there, just so you know. And there's 2 guys that came from Yale to prove that Jesus wasn't that famous, wasn't that all that. And so they wanted to compare the name of Caesar to Jesus. So every time they found the mention of Caesar, they found 15,000 mentions of Jesus in the same time period. All concerning his healings and how he did things. Jesus never came second to anything, and the church doesn't either. And you as a business and as a ministry, you don't either. And you have to change your mentality of who you are. The majority of what you're going to deal with as a business person is how you perceive yourself. That if you're like, you have a yogurt shop, let's say. You've got to come into work every day saying, we are the #1 yogurt shop in Salem, Oregon. No one does better than us. And you instill that into your employees, and you instill that into the people around you, because without vision, my people shall perish. You have to have vision for your people. Why do you even own a business? Because if you don't know why you own a business, you don't have vision, and people don't know how to follow. And then the next thing I'm going to do is, and then I'm going to ask you, I'm on a roll. You are not, as a business owner and as an employer, you're not their friend. Are you hearing me? You're not their buddy. You are a leader in their life, and you have to be as such. So therefore, there's times you have to make decisions you don't want to have to make. You're going to have to do things you don't want to have to do, but you have, because of the vision, you have vision. If you have vision, it's easier to make the hard decisions. Because if what they're doing, he was talking about having a Satanist in your business. If that doesn't line up with the vision of your business, it's not hard to make a decision to say, I can't have you be involved with this. Or give your heart to Jesus, one of the two. Because it's not going to, we're going to end up hating each other. And I like you. And because I like you, I got to let you go. Are you hearing me? And so because you know your vision, then you'll also know how to treat your employees, and you'll also know how to have your policies. Does that make sense? At church here, we have all of that. We're not just loosey-goosey throwing stuff out. Everything's based around the vision that God has given us, and we build around that. And it's the same thing in any business. You have to have that. If you don't know your vision or your mission, right? You have a vision statement, and you should have a mission, right?
Yep. Yes.
I'm still a preacher. Occasional amen or shut up. I'll even take a shut up, all right? So, thanks. Thanks. I felt good, actually. The shut up is good. Makes me very happy. Brings me back to my street days. So whenever you do that, then you're empowered to move forward in your business. Listen, you don't hear a lot of preachers talk this way because I love, once again, I'm going back to people. I love people. And I've been around businesses like, I don't want to take it. Are you okay? All right. I had a friend in Australia. He's actually still, he's one of my best friends. And he built a company. He went to work for a company that took the barnacles off the boat in Port Lincoln, Australia, which is the largest, most southerly port in the world. And he built it up to a multi-million-dollar business. He sold it, took his family around the world, and did missions around the world. That's where I met him. I met him in Kanab, Utah, of all places. And we ended up hitting it off and became very good friends. And to make a long story as long as possible, because I'm a preacher, he called me up one day and he said, listen, I'm getting bored. And the Harley dealership is for sale. Will you pray about whether I should buy it or not? So I did. Because I have a relationship with business people, right? So I prayed, Father, is this good? And the Lord said, no, it's death. So I called him up and I said, don't buy the Harley dealership. It will kill you. It's going to kill you. It's going to destroy things all around you. And he said, oh, thank you so much. Thank you so much. And he said, about a month later, he calls me up and he goes, Pastor Lou, you know, this is amazing. I offered them $5 million for the business, and they came back and sold it to me for $2 million. And I go, well, I'm sorry, what'd you say? He said, they sold it to me for $2 million. You bought the Harley dealership. He said, yeah, I couldn't pass up the deal. Listen to what I'm trying to tell you right now. I couldn't pass up the deal. Because if the devil can't get you to slow down, he'll get you to speed up. And so all of a sudden, he owns this Harley dealership, and I go and visit him, and he ended up, are you ready for this? $45 million in debt. He spent $2 million on the business. Good deal. And ended up in debt and $45 million and lost the business, lost his 500-acre ranch or farm, sheep farm that he had, his dream home, his vehicles, everything he had, he lost absolutely everything. I did not call him and say, I told you so. He called me and said, I'll never make another business decision without talking to you first. Understand? Same thing happened with a dairy farmer. They said, hey, will you pray for this dairy farm? Should we buy it? Don't buy it. I come back from Australia, and they said, hey, we want to show you what we got. And we went right to the property that I said, don't buy. And they bought it. And I said, well, but I never cursed them. I helped them. You know what I'm saying? I helped them milk the cows. I helped them do whatever I could. But what happened was they ended up losing everything in that. Just because something is a good deal doesn't mean it's a God deal. And just because you have an opportunity doesn't mean that you should take the opportunity without really praying about it and seeking the Lord and seeking counsel. If you have a pastor, you go to a church, and you have a pastor that hears from God, not some moron that doesn't listen to God and just listens to the politics and does whatever the politics say to do, but actually listens to God, then I would go to them for godly wisdom and say, what is God speaking to you? I need confirmation. Does this help anybody? I'm just going off actually what he's been talking about. I'm like stirring over here.
No, he's got an insight. I mean, he's so unusual. I mean, he's got a business acumen that is unique. I mean, there's some people, you know how I rate, I'm going to give you some insight. We develop skills when you are a business owner, and when I started out when I was a kid, in business, I always had that drive, understanding. I'm an immigrant to this country, so to me, this is the greatest country in the world. I do not understand why every American is not a millionaire. I really have a hard time with it. Because everybody, right? I mean, everybody can be a millionaire. It's easy to be a millionaire in this country. And the easiest way to become a millionaire is with real estate. I mean, you can buy a house, fix it up, literally flip it, double it to triple it sometimes, and then buy another one, do it again, do it over and over. That's the easiest way to make money. The other one is just to start a business that is a service-oriented business and develop great business skills, meaning be good to your customers and develop a good reputation, right? And God will bless your business if you're doing all the right things. The processes that God has created, because he created everything, are God is a God of order. We all agree. God made everything in order. Everything he does is in order. That's why we follow the word, right? It's awesome. He is consistent. He will never fail you. So why do we test it? If we know, it's a good example. If you don't pray for, I've so many times just forgot. Did I ask God about that? That's a major decision. You should have really talked to God about it. And how many times I had to go back and go, I'm changing my mind. Why? Oh, God. Do you really want to know? And that starts a witnessing. And then I go, and you never know if that was the whole example. You know what I like my favorite thing about God is that even though sometimes we make the mistake, if you reach out to him, because he redeems you, he will find you the way out. Right? So I ask myself all the time, why do I fall into these things? It's because the earth this is how it is. I mean, you have opposition all the time. You can live outside opposition if you're prayerful, but also you're making the right decisions. When you're making consistent right decisions, your business gets easier to manage. If you add one thing in, I'll give you an example. I always say this. Do not have family in your business. It is very rare that it works. Very, very rare. The only people that I know can do that are people from India. They are the only ones. They're cultured, right? They're cultured. Their parents, we have Filipinos, good point. They're cultured. Their parents find a suitable mate, right? That they have things in common. They grow. Their families merge, and there is a sense of family, right? I love it when Hindus become Christians because they just are perfect because they have that family value, But why I say that is when you start identifying people, and I have this interesting way I manage. I pick people up. I interview a lot of the employees that come in just for a minute. I want to know who they are, because I want to know who works for me. Again, if there's something not there, I want to rebuke them, and I rebuke them in kind of under my tone. I go, oh God, if this guy's not for me or for us, because one employee can change the course. I had this one lady come in. We hired her years after I bought this business. And I didn't understand why the business was having some financial problems. Like the numbers weren't right. Well, this woman was at the front of the business. And she's also been there now a couple of years. She was so rude and condescending that people found the same product somewhere else. Just because one person. And she's the one that answered the phone. Is that funny? One person. So one day I was in there, God showed me this is her. And it was weird because I normally don't come through the way it happens. I overheard her talking to a customer. And I said, I record all the conversations. All of our phones, systems record every conversation anyways. And I wanted to play back the last 10 days. And I was just blown away how she treated customers. So we fired her, put in a new person. The business had record-breaking. So I'm going to teach you guys a little thing that I come up with. When I talk to somebody, I rate people by speed of how they think. Because that's one thing that I know about me is I have a whole overactive brain. I have a hard time shutting my brain down. So it's an exercise to do that at the end of the day. Some of you may be that way. You never shut it down. Right? Yeah. That's why you can't sleep. But I figured out a way. I have a hack. But what I do is when I meet somebody, I rate them in 3 categories. Okay? I call people that I just, this first level is called the speed. It's called 55 mile an hour. That's a 55 mile an hour. All my staff knows this. Well, that person's a 55 mile an hour guy. And that's a guy that does a good job, but can't handle pressure. He has to be told what to do, and he can't make decisions on his own unless they're 1, 2, 3. So you got to give them. And how I relate that is someone that works at like a fast food checkout, let's say. They have a monitor there. They can push the keys. They give change because the change is told. But they're great. You have to have them. But those are 55 mile an hour employees. I have lots of them, hundreds of them, thousands of them in my lifetime. Yeah, order takers, right? And you have to have them, right? And you have to bless them. You have to take care of them. You have to make sure that you're able to, if you're not taking care of your employees, they're not taking care of you. That's a fact. So that's how I look at it. Then the next level, my second level, is the speed of sound. Speed of sound is about 650 miles an hour, okay? And that's a person that thinks faster, can handle a little more stress, understands structure, and that person's a manager. That's the manager of the fast food place. The guy that's managing, a dozen people on the floor, but has been given a framework. They're not the ones that design the framework. They're just capable of following the framework and manage multiple people, okay? Now I call it the speed of sound, okay? So you hear me with my staff go, well, where is this guy going to be? He goes, oh, he's the speed of sound guy. Cool, you need a lot of them, and they're great. Now, there's one more level above that. It's called the speed of light, okay? And the speed of light is 10,000 to 10,000 power. I mean, it's pretty fast, right? Those are the business owners. Those are the pastors, the ones that think way ahead, the ones that can process multiple things. Usually that's the person that owns the business. It should be. Now here's a question for you. Can you take a 55 mile an hour guy and move him up to the level of the speed of sound guy? The answer is no. Generally, if they don't have a radical change in their education and their ability to raise the bar for themselves, they can't go. Okay, now let me ask you a question. Could the speed of light guy become a 55 mile an hour guy? The answer is yes. Because to be a good leader, you have to be a good follower, right? But we're capable of doing that. Pastor is a servant. I'll watch him. I mean, that's what he does, right? But when you take people, and I've made this mistake so many times. I've promoted somebody, we've all done this, that was a 55 mile an hour guy, made him into the speed of sound guy, and he's failed miserably. You cannot take someone without nurturing them. If you're not nurturing your flock and putting new ideas in them, training them, I find it interesting. I have a classroom in every one of my buildings for training. We train constantly. I do it right in front of them. I preach to them all the time. I tell them, this will cause bad things. Just let them know, And they know my views. And I've got every type of walk of life working for me. Every type of walk of life. But they all are good people. That's the factor that has to be consistent. And they all, at one point in time, I've evangelized to every one of them at one point in time. And some of them takes years for them to come back and go, I'm ready. It always blows my mind that somebody comes, I'm ready. When you least expect it, it's going to happen. But that is our job. I'm scared of the day that I see the Lord and I see all the opportunities that I didn't do. You ever think about that? Right? How many times I try to narrow the bridge now the older I get. I'm like, okay, everywhere I go, I don't know if I sit next to somebody. And sometimes, I go on when I go on vacation, I have an unusual vacation usually. if I'm going somewhere, when I land there, I take a few days to get to know the area. I always go look at real estate. I call a realtor. I say, show me property. I love to see how people live. I mean, I remember the questions I was asking in the car was, what's the average cost of a house here? You know, what do people do? Where do they work? You know, and I do that. The second thing I do is I look to see if there's a business broker to see what business I want to buy. It's horrible because I end up usually going on vacation and I gave myself a job. You know, that's the other problem when you acquire businesses. You know, sometimes if you are the lure of having your own business is a great idea, unless you don't. If you have the stomach for it, great. If you don't, you're going to have a hard time adjusting to your own schedule. So if you don't find a business that you have a passion for, you're gonna fail. That's just the mathematics of it. One of the things I'll talk about tomorrow is I'm going to talk about budgeting. The reason why I'm dyslexic, so numbers to me float and it's tough. The reason why I became successful was God one day put this in my heart to learn accounting. And meaning there's two types of accounting. There's one accounting which is, Fran accounting, like the math, I think. I sometimes call it girl math. You guys know about girl math? It doesn't make sense, right? But in business, we do this. I mean, I'll give you the number one mistake. Somebody comes to see me and says, I'm having some financial difficulty. And I go, okay, your business is looking like it's doing good. I mean, you're all over the place. I mean, you're busy. Your business is growing. He goes, yeah. And then I'll ask him, well, let's look at your financial budget. And the truth is, they don't have to really have it in print, but I'm going to teach you guys what I do. I know how much it costs me per day to exist. I know how much my business costs me every day to keep its doors open. Every day, at the end of the day, I can show you if you wanted to on my phone, I get numbers from all the presidents of all my divisions. My job is to keep an eye on my business. I don't actually work the business every day like I used to. My job is to oversee the business. And since there's an anomaly coming, right? And then I have to react to it. That is your job. If you are in your business and you are scrubbing the floors and producing the product, you're not looking out ahead of your business. Sometimes I tell people all the time, you cannot afford not to hire somebody. The biggest thing I learned early on was when I started hiring employees. I didn't know how to manage. My parents were not business people. So hiring employees, I still employ my first employee. He's 80-some years old. Yeah. He's a phone guy. The guy sounds like he's a 20-year-old guy on the phone. He does cold calling for my company. Whatever company needs cold calling, he cold calls. He's got such a beautiful voice, and he gets in anywhere. We used to play a game. We'd say, all right, let's see who can get to the vice president's wife. And we would play this game. I always won. I have a knack. I can get to anybody. I'm tenacious, but I do it. I have these funny ways of. But you know what? My best gift is I look outside the box to develop new methods of generating businesses. A friend of mine had a bank, and he's in a bad area of banks. There's so many banks in his neighborhood. But when I looked at the demographics of his bank, I said, you have an elderly population here. And he said, I understand how banks make money by depositors putting money in and then issuing loans. And actually, they really make their money from overdrafting. That's how much money they make on overdrafting. So I said to him, what I'm going to do since I own a factory in China? I'm going to go ahead and make you some customized toasters that say the bank's name. And you're going to give them to every new. We're going to run an ad on television. Open a bank, deposit in our bank, and you get the token. Yeah. So I had made 5,000 toasters. How many toasters did I give away the first month? Yeah, I had 5. We totally sold out. I had to run another run. He had to cancel the campaign because it was very successful. But he thought out of the box. I remembered that. I don't know if I remember my parents talking about you got a free toaster if you open an account, right? But people really grasped to that. you know. So I'm always looking for, I'm a marketing guy. I mean, I look at marketing. I mean, I managed high profile, intellectual properties, you know. Dealing with Martha Stewart was not easy. But God gave me a thick skin. I don't know what it is. I don't know why he sent me to her. I mean, I would talk to her all the time. The last day that I worked for her was the day she went to prison. I was in the car with her because she had to deal with Walmart, and Walmart wanted out. They wanted to release. So she could either sue them to stay in, and I advised her to let it go. I said, Martha, when you get back out of prison, you're gonna be much more successful than you were now. It's true. When she got out, she became a billionaire. But anyways, it was interesting because, by the way, she was guilty because she was telling me about that stock. Luckily, I didn't buy the stock. But my point is managing these type of personalities. And the funny thing about it is their entity that they have is she had like 2 employees. No one would work for her. She was mean. I mean, just mean. You know, and she'd fly off the handle. And then I managed Joy Mangado, which if you ever want to watch the movie Joy, it's a story of Joy Mangado. Bradley Cooper plays me in the movie, which is cool. Yeah. So watch, it's a really good story. Yeah, I was with QVC at the time, and they just started HSN, and I brought Joy over, and it's a good movie. It's a good movie about inventors. You know, how many inventors do we have in the room? Inventors, good. Do we? Okay, good. I have an inventor's heart. I mean, I'm a patent guy, and I've made most of my wealth inventing. I was a magician when I was a kid, so I developed a lot of toys, and I knew that I'd be working the rest of my life as a magician, performing every night. I worked all over the world. So one day I just started figuring out, let me just start developing products, and I knew that I was anointed.
Why did you invent the snow machine?
Well, that's an interesting story. When I was I started, well, I was a magician, and when the Gulf War happened in 1990, all of my corporate gigs were canceled, and so I jumped on a cruise ship. And one day, the cruise director and I were buddies. He said, "Hey, when we go to Puerto Rico, there's an orphanage. We'd like you to come and do magic for the kids." And I said, "Oh, okay." So I went with them, and I performed for these kids, and they were blown away. But there was this little area in the back that the kids that had leukemia were quarantined, but they couldn't see me as close. So I decided to go in there and perform for them. There's just 3 of them in there. And one of the kids, his name was Jose, he loved magic. He had actually magic books, and he was a sick kid who was just dropped off. His parents never came back to see him. He didn't know how long he had to live. But he was so positive. It was like, wow, this kid loved magic. I mean, that's what the nurses really liked him. He had that beautiful type personality. And I said to him after the show, I said, "Hey, I'm going to come back in 2 weeks. I'll come see you. What would you like to see?" That was a mistake to tell a kid that's pretty. He says, "All my life I wanted to see snow." So I said, "Okay, I'll figure out." "Oh yeah, okay." So I go back to the ship, and I figure out ways of doing it, thinking, okay, how can I do it? Do I use paper? So I have a really good chemistry background, as you can tell with weird stuff. So I figured out a way I took apart a vacuum cleaner, made a high pressure system that makes a hollow snowflake. And it's funny because if I would have said no, I didn't really want to do the kids show because I did thousands of kids shows. And the day I'm off on a cruise ship, I wanted to go to the beach. And so what ends up happening is I develop this thing. I come back to see the kid, and the kid's bed's empty. So he passed away. But anyways, I had this idea, this product. So I put it on a shelf, and life goes on. A couple of years later, a producer's in town, and he wanted to see some stuff. Anyways, I showed him the snow machine, and he said, "I want you to do it for my Christmas tree lighting." So I had to make a giant version of it. And then in the audience that December 15th was a producer from Paramount that was a director as well. And he said, "Hey, I'd love to use that on a film." And this is 35 years ago. And I took it to the film industry. Now it's a standard in every theme park in the world. But then I started to do other things like lightning and crazy stuff, and I just developed. So that's how I developed the largest special effects company in the world. We're in every country, on every movie set, we're everywhere. But again, God gave me, he opened all the doors, you know. And that's the funny thing about being in business. He will open doors for you. He will find you customers. I'm in-house at Disney. There's very few companies that are in-house. I am in a space of evil with these. I'm an Imagineer. I've been inducted years ago. And all my counterparts are a very liberal background and ideas, you know. And I just pray. By the way, when you can't protest in an environment that you're going to be ousted, what do? Just pray. Just pray. And I elevated through that.